If there's one niche that Hulu has carved out for itself, it is limited series that are based on true stories. And if there is one true story that was just begging for a Hulu adaptation, it is the story behind the famous male stripping venue, the Chippendales. Now, Chippendales is a new limited series that premieres today on Hulu. Subsequent episodes are going to be coming out week by week. I did have the opportunity to screen all 8 episodes in advance, so thank you, Hulu. The show comes to you from Robert Siegel, who also produced Hulu's Pam and Tommy. It stars Kumail Nanjiani as showman Banerjee, who eventually went by Steve Banerjee. He was an Indian immigrant who founded the club that eventually became known as Chippendales. Now, from the start with the opening credit sequence, this show does a fantastic job at really transporting you into an atmosphere of the 80s and nightclubs and disco balls, neon lights, great pop music, and all of the things that we would associate with the vibe of the 1980s. I loved hearing the music, seeing the costumes, watching that opening sequence, and this show really covers all of the things you think of when you think of 80s glam. Now, the show's main character, Steve Banerjee, starts out in a world that isn't so glamorous, working as a manager at a gas station. In the first episode, we meet a man who is very hardworking, but ultimately aspires for something more. He idolizes Hugh Hefner and sees him as really the archetype of the American dream, a man who has it all. And that's something that he wants for himself. But as an immigrant from India, he faces casual racism every day working at the gas station. Eventually, he decides to try to assimilate by changing his name from Showman to Steve. And he uses money that he saved up from working at the gas station to purchase a nightclub. His original vision is to start this upscale club where people can come and play backgammon while they drink. That concept never takes off, and after some rebranding attempts, he settles on making a Playboy-esque club, but instead of it being for men, it is geared towards heterosexual women that are there to see male strippers. In the supporting cast, we see people who work with him in business relationships. Annaleigh Ashford plays the woman who is his accountant. Juliette Lewis plays the costume designer. I love seeing her, especially after Yellow Jackets. We have Paul Snider as a nightclub promoter, Nick DeNova as the creative director, who is someone that has a lot of conflict with Steve Banerjee. As the show progresses, it has this incredible rags to riches story for Steve Banerjee as he essentially becomes this archetype of the person he has always wanted to be, the Hugh Hefner-esque character who runs a successful business. But with that comes some conflict behind the scenes that has very unsettling consequences. Now, as with most shows that are based on true events, if you've watched documentaries and you've listened to podcasts about this true story, you might be a little less engaged in this story. Speaking for myself, I really haven't watched any of the documentaries about the Chippendales story. I did briefly look through some information on Wikipedia, but that was about it. So I think that really did enhance my experience watching this show. I think Kumail Nanjiani did an incredible job in his role as the main character. Although the character he is portraying isn't always super expressive, he just has a very nuanced way of portraying all of his mannerisms, and you see this evolution from episode 1 to episode 8 of him going from being the gas station manager to him being the head of this business empire, and just seeing those little changes with his mannerisms as time goes on. I think Nanjiani did a superb job portraying this role. I always respect someone who can go from doing comedic roles to branching out and doing drama, doing action films. So I think his career is in a really exciting place. Ultimately, though, it does portray Steve Banerjee as sort of a tragic figure rather than a villain. And without spoiling anything, I will say Banerjee does make some pretty dark decisions as the show progresses. I can see where some people might think portraying him as sort of a tragic hero is maybe not the right way to do it. That being said, since this is how it was framed, I do think Nanjiani did a good job of selling that to me. I did feel for his character as this went on. I was more into the latter half of the season rather than the beginning. There were just certain pacing issues, especially with the first episode, where you had certain things that I thought were really interesting and then they just kind of zoom past it. But I suppose all's well that ends well, because I do think the closing episode was very well crafted. Compared to some of the other limited series that we've seen from Hulu, I wouldn't put this on the level of shows like The Dropout, but I do still think there is so much to see from this show, from episode 1 all the way until the conclusion, from that rad 80s atmosphere to a fantastic cast, and there's an engaging story that will hook in fans of true crime while also having a background of male strippers to keep things interesting. This show is definitely worth a watch. Again, the premiere is today, and then subsequent episodes will come each week. So if you're signed up for Hulu, I do recommend checking out Welcome to Chippendales. Have you watched this show? What did you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to this YouTube channel to stay up to date with all things streaming. I want to thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you all have a good one. Bye-bye.